No, they had short. Okay. Okay. Okay.
The joke is on the mayor.
Anyway, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Newman City Council meeting, the regular meeting of October 24th, 2017 to order. I'd like everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and remain standing for the invocation. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Integrity is telling myself the truth. Honesty is telling the truth to other people. Let's pray. Most gracious Father, we thank you tonight for the opportunity to serve our community. We ask your blessings on this meeting. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember McDonald,
Here.
Graham, Mayor Pro Tem Candia,
Here.
Day,
Here.
Mayor Martina.
Here. I'd like to report out from closed session that the city manager has been given direction. 5 is the declaration of conflict of interest.
None.
None.
Tonight, okay. And then we move on to several matters. And presentation by Stan Cog regarding the Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Kendall Flint with Regional Government Services, and I'm here on behalf of the Stanislaus Council of Governments. I'm joined with Elizabeth Hahn, who's the project manager on this particular project. And I want to thank you for letting us come in tonight and keeping you up to speed, and also for being first, because I might catch the last 2 innings of the game, and I'm with you, Mike. Go Oilers, okay. Go Houston, go Houston.
Well, we have a special place in our heart for Stan Cog. You know that.
Of course you do.
Because you're the good people that give us all the money we need.
And thanks to Measure L, there'll be more money for us to give, which is really great. Thank you for that support. So basically what I'm here to do tonight is give you a quick update on the update to the Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Communities Strategy. You may remember we did this about 4 years ago, and basically it takes a look at bus, it talks about rail. Now we've got ACE coming here, which is very exciting. We also have looks at bike lanes, pedestrian lanes, looking at improvements to 99 as well as 5. And then, of course, we have point-to-point services and other types of transportation that helps seniors, veterans, and folks with special needs to get around. And as we all know, there's a number of different roadways going east, west, north, south, cutting across. Tonight we came over through Coast Landing as an example, and there's a lot of roadway out there and a lot of challenges making that all work. We've also got a county that's predominantly agriculturally driven, so we want to make sure that when we have our transportation plan that we are supporting local agriculture and making sure that we're preserving that farmland, and of course making sure that open space is still available. So what is the plan? Basically, it's mandated by the federal government. In the 70s, Congress decided that they thought it would be a good idea for regions to get together and discuss how they wanted to collectively plan for future transportation investments. So StanCog is one of 18 councils of governments in California that basically works with all of the member agencies, City of Newman, Patterson, Modesto, the whole gang. And basically what that does is we work with each of the individual agencies and say, what are the projects you've got planned for the next 20, 25 years? So we work very closely with Stephanie and with Mike and your staff and say, what do you have planned? What kind of things are you going to be doing in terms of general plan? What kind of projects do you want to see done? And then what we do is we take all that information and we link it together with the other communities so that we're not looking just at transportation, but we're looking at transportation and land use. And that's what got us to the Sustainable Community Strategy, which was required by SB 375, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Basically, we have a project prioritized by list. So each agency has different things that they want to see funded, and then of course there are regional things that will be funded. Anything that's included in Measure L specific to regional projects will be in the regional transportation plan, regardless of which of the scenarios we wind up with. Basically, it has to reach a greenhouse gas target, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. That's, again, one of the things that's required by law. And then it has to be compliant with environmental justice and the California Environmental Quality Act, which means you can't take all the money and put it in one place and leave other communities out. You need to make sure that it's balanced for socioeconomic status and that it's not going to negatively impact the environment. So this is a map some of you have seen more than once. These are just some of our regional projects that will be coming up in the next 20, 25 years. And these include Highway 132, or sorry, 132, interchanges at Briggsmore, at Zacharias, at Standiford. We've got roadway improvements, widening, things like that that'll be happening. And all of those, along with the projects right here in Newman, will all go in the plan. So the idea is to coordinate, again, land use with transportation, so we figure out ways that we can package these investments to put things where people need to work, live, and be able to manufacture and or process agricultural goods and get those to market. It does not supersede local authority. So your general plan is still your general plan. Your circulation element, all those things remain constant. What the RTP does is basically bring all these different investments into an umbrella that allows you to qualify for state and federal funding. That's basically what it is, so that you want to have your projects in the plan so that they can get that money for later. Bonus right now, again, Measure L passed with almost 72% of the vote. You may recall that is the highest in the state of California since 1986 and the highest in the last election campaign. So clearly voters really wanted to see some changes to the way that their local roads were maintained. At the same time in the summer, this summer, Senator Cannella and some other folks were able to pass Senate Bill 1, which basically readjusted the gas tax to account for inflation. It hadn't been adjusted since the 80s. So between those two things, 4 years ago, we did not have much to talk about in terms of what we could do for future investment because, frankly, there was no money. Now we're looking at $2 to $3 billion in additional funds for here in Stanislaus County that we can put to work. So where we're at right now is the tail end of all of the initial phase of outreach, looking at the plans both from a land use standpoint and the transportation, and then they've developed what's called scenarios. And the scenarios are basically 4 investment package by theme that we're going to be bringing out to workshops in the coming weeks. One of those workshops is going to be right here in Newman, thank you, Mr. Holland, so that we'll be able to have some folks here weighing in. Now, these different scenarios are really set up to basically represent thematic change. So one scenario may have more investment in bus and rail. Another one might look more closely at infill development, more compact growth, and getting services that are more closely tied together. For each of these things, they are run through a model that has been developed and is being utilized through most of the San Joaquin, Stanislaus, and Merced County. And basically, you look at these different elements: mobility and accessibility. How well will the plan make it easy for people to get around? Social equity, is it fair? Economic and community vitality, will it increase or spur growth for the economy, jobs, the ability for us to attract higher paying jobs? Sustainable development pattern refers to the ability of it to maintain valuable farmland, open space, view corridors, and that sort of thing. Environmental quality, exactly what it sounds like. What will be the impact in terms of air quality, noise, water, traffic, all these different things would be looked at. Safety and health. Safety, we want our roads to be safe, well lit. We want people to be able to get around and feel comfortable. Health is one of the newer elements, which is basically trying to get all of us to get out of our cars and start walking, biking, and having more walkable communities that make us healthier by doing that, and also, of course, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And then finally, we look at system preservation. And overall, that's one thing we really found out in Al. While everyone likes the idea of all these other projects and whatnot, the vast majority of people that we've spoken to, the thing they care about most is their own local roads being maintained, what we have on the ground, making sure that that's going to be well served moving forward. So before we go off and do all these other things, we want to make sure that we are maintaining the infrastructure that we have. So at this point, the 4 scenarios have been developed. Our workshops begin actually next week, now that I think about that. We've been making presentations to all of the various city councils, and we'll also be making one for the Board of Supervisors. At this point, we've conducted probably 25 or 30 community presentations. We've been here in Newman for your Rotary, I believe Kiwanis as well. We're talking to seniors, we're doing things in Spanish. We're trying to get as much of a cross-section as possible because, as you can see tonight, it's not just because of the game, I know it. A lot of people don't come to city council meetings, and a lot of people don't come to workshops. So it's sort of our job to take that message out to them. And in doing so, we create online opportunities for people to participate. So there's two ways in this particular process. You can go through the stancog.org site, or you can go to valleyvisionstanislaus.org. And in each case, you can participate in a virtual workshop where you can look at the presentation that I've been giving and listen to it, and then you can weigh in on the question and answer and tell us what your opinions are, what projects you'd like to see, and what things you'd like to have us look at going forward. So our next 3 workshops, Monday, November 6th, I cannot believe that it's already November. That's going to be at the City of Modesto Library downtown on I Street. That's at 6 o'clock. On the 13th, we're here in the Newman City Hall. So we'll be right here with your folks, and then Tuesday the 14th we'll be in the Ceres Community Center. And all of these workshops will have kind of 2 parts. We'll have an overview of the scenarios, the ability to ask questions about the impacts of each scenario, which one you like better, and then we'll be doing some quick polling and discussion about the merits of each. So again, my name is Kendall Flint. I am the project manager for the outreach portion of the program. My contact information is here. I know that Mike, the mayor, and Councilmember Candera all have my numbers, but if you need them, they're there. And Elizabeth Hahn is also here tonight, and she's the project manager for StanCog. So both of us are available to answer any questions you might have about the RTPSCS, about L, about ACE, about anything that relates to this particular process that we're into right now. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the end of last year we talked about the corridor. Is that corridor still in
Great question, and thanks for asking. As a matter of fact, tomorrow night at the Stanislaus Agricultural Center, the county is going to have a workshop for the Crow's Landing corridor study. Now that's different than the South County corridor study. That was when we were looking at connections between 99 and 5.
Correct.
That study completed 2 years ago. There were 2 northern alignments that go Patterson to Turlock, and there's a southern alignment that goes Newman to Turlock. Nothing's been determined about that yet, although my understanding is that the county is looking for funds to move forward with the next phase, which is taking those 3 alignments through an environmental review. However, tomorrow night, at the meeting at the Ag Center at the Harvest Hall, that's at 6:30, they're going to go over in somewhat of great detail about some of the improvements that they think are needed in that corridor, and it does include some of the things that potentially could affect that southern alignment should it come into. So that information is available both on the county's Public Works website or at the meeting tomorrow night.
And so happened that just last week I spoke with Vince Harris,
Oh,
and Vince is doing great.
oh, good. Good,
Yeah.
good, good. I've seen him forever. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you so much for
I'm going to watch the Dodger game. Go Houston.
You can stay for our meeting if you'd like. But anyway, thank you for coming. Drive carefully going home.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 7. This is items from the public, either non-agenda items. Anyone who would like to speak to the council, please go to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
She's a regular, huh?
Good evening, Council. My name is Carrie Thompson. I live at 737 Black Mountain Lane. And I'm here this evening because I wanted to share with you information on our recent downtown Newman Art Walk that we held this past Saturday from 3 to 6. I get asked a lot, what is an art walk? So in a nutshell, let me just say that it's a pedestrian event where people would stroll to a business, look at local art. We added in some history and architecture information about the buildings and the locations. And they toured around to 12 stops that were hosted by 11 different businesses. We had 150 people turn out for our first annual Art Walk. Of those 150, 100 received a passport, and a passport was basically a map for them to follow with a list of addresses for all of the stops. We had placed ads in the classified section of the newspaper for a few weeks before to give people clues and hints as to where the stops would be. And so as they visited these places, they received a stamp in their book. We had 50 people return those in to be entered into a drawing for our hashtag Night Out in Newman free drawing prize. And that for us is a hashtag that we started on social media a year ago to inspire people to look a little closer to home and not so far and wide to get their do their evenings out. So today we drew the two winners, Karen Freitas and sisters Isabel and Sophie Hayes were both winners for our free drawing. And what they won was they each received a gift certificate from the Westside Theater Foundation for dinner for four, pre-show with an artist, and $100 in tickets. They received a $50 gift certificate to my shop, Carrie's Treasure Trove. They received a month of unlimited fitness from Powers Productions, and they received a VIP tour for four of the California State Capitol, courtesy of Senator Canella's office. So they were all quite thrilled to receive their news today that they won. And so again, that was 11 businesses total that participated with 12 stops, one of which being the theater and another being the museum, and 13 artists. And we really had a great time. We worked with the Westside Art Association, the Newman Historical Society, with the theater group there with Ferris. She was wonderful too, and with the newspapers. So we hope to do it again next year, and I just wanted to give you a heads up on how well it was received to get some community going downtown. Thank you for your time.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you for giving us a report. That is outstanding. I would have never thought you'd get 150 people.
Yeah.
You know, I had said all along if the 5 people I was going to pay showed up and had a good time, it was a success. And when we started counting all of these people, I was so pleasantly surprised. And it really was a great venue. People could stroll freely up and down the street. You had large families. You had people who were needing some assistance walking. Everyone got around easily, enjoyed being able to go, to go into businesses. And it was a good time.
Well, thank you. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very good. Look forward to next year.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. And with that, I'll open it up to anyone else that may want to speak for the council. Last chance, till next council meeting. Anyway, we'll move on, and we're moving on to the consent calendar. A, waive all readings of ordinance and resolutions except by title. B, approval of warrants. C, approval of minutes of the September 26, 2017 meeting. D, adopt resolution number 2017 authorizing the submission of an application for public fleet pilot project grant funds from the California Air Resource Board and authorize the execution of documents by the city manager or designee. And with that,
I'll make a motion, we approve the consent calendar as is.
Second.
a motion's been made and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried 4 with 1 absent. Thank you very much. Move on to item 9, which is a public hearing. A, second reading and adoption of ordinance number 2017, next number, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newman amending Title 10 Traffic Regulations, adding Section 10.04.050B2 parking restrictions on Hills Ferry Road in the 800 and 900 block, and authorizing staff to publish a summary of said ordinance. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Tonight before you is the second reading for the public hearing, amending the ordinance for Title 10 Traffic Regulations, that's 10.04.05, Paragraph B, Subsection 2, parking restrictions on Hills Ferry Road. It's currently restricted parking there from 2 to 5 a.m. There's no parking for any vehicles along that residential section of Hills Ferry between Sherman Parkway and Edenburg. And what has been proposed is to have permit parking there for the residents that are along that section from midnight to 5 a.m. This would be permit parking only for those vehicles. There would still be no truck parking in that area, and signage would be erected to indicate that as well. This item was introduced for the first reading and waived at the September 25th council meeting. No changes were recommended by the council during that meeting. I can answer any questions that you may have in regard to this.
Any questions from the council?
I have one quick question. Have we notified the residents in that particular area in terms of inviting them to, let's say, a public meeting to hear the ordinance that we're being passed?
I don't believe that each individual residence has been notified.
Is that something
We
that
published it in the newspaper, Councilman.
we have?
Yes.
Okay, because I guess the reason why I bring that up is because each resident in that area is going to have to purchase a permit. Am I correct?
No.
No.
If they don't want to park there, they don't need to purchase a permit.
Well, the ones that want to park there.
The ones that want to park there are going to need to purchase a permit, correct?
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks, man.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so I'll open up to the public for any comments tonight. There being none, I'll bring it back to the council for direction.
Move for approval of the second reading and adoption of ordinance number 2017 next in number, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newman amending Title 10 Traffic Regulations, adding Section 10.04.050 B2 parking restrictions on Hills Ferry Road in the 800 and 900 block, and authorize staff to publish a summary of said ordinance.
Second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried 4 with 1 absent. Thank you very much, Officer Short. Lieutenant Short, I'm sorry. 10 is regular business. Report on Newman Chamber of Commerce tree lighting event at the downtown plaza. And that's also yours.
It's also mine tonight. The Newman Chamber of Commerce has requested exclusive use of the downtown plaza and 1300 block of Main Street on December 2nd of this year from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. to hold their annual tree lighting event. Event organizers have scheduled the fire truck ride, or so they shall, from 3 to 4:30 p.m., as well as food and craft booths. There will be a DJ at the plaza playing holiday music. This will also be a no alcohol served or sold event. The event organizers are seeking your approval for their event, as always. They have requested exclusive use of the downtown plaza and the 1300 block of Main Street, street closures at Main and Tulare and Main and Fresno. Use of the plaza restroom facilities and electrical power at the location. They would like to waive the standards for downtown events in the following areas. The cleanup deposit, the $1,000, they'd like you to waive that. Business licenses for vendors at the event. Insurance reduction to $1 million. The current standard is a figure of $3 million. And traffic and crowd control device usage. The city does have barricades that can be utilized. And it takes approximately 9 to 10 just to close that event off. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have in regard to the event.
Questions? Okay, being no questions, I'll bring it back to the council for direction.
I'll make a motion we approve the report on the Newman Chamber of Commerce tree lighting event at the downtown plaza.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Those opposed? Motion carried 4 yes and 1 absent.
Thank you.
B, we'll do this in 2 parts. Again, two motion.
Yeah, you'd be accepting 2 resolutions. Yeah.
Okay, B is accept the 2015 wastewater rate study and authorize the city manager to initiate Proposition 218 proceedings from changing wastewater rates. 1 is adopt resolution number 2017, next number, accepting the 2017 water rate study.
Evening, Mayor, council members.
Good evening.
The city contracted with Hansford Economic Consulting to perform a utility rate study on our wastewater enterprise. Utility rate studies are forward-looking and make an effort to determine what rates an enterprise would have to have in place to fund its maintenance, operations, and future debt payments. The first resolution on the staff report is to accept this study. Catherine Hansford, principal at Hansford Economic Consulting, is here tonight to present their report. At the conclusion of the report, she'll answer any questions you may have. At the completion of the presentation, a vote on this resolution will be needed. After the vote, I'll speak on the second resolution. Catherine?
Thank you. Good evening.
Welcome.
Okay. So I have a quick presentation for you. Just as way of background, the city has approximately 3,100 wastewater accounts. The vast majority of those are residential accounts. So 96% of those are residential and 4% are non-residential. In terms of who uses the wastewater system, residential customers use about 61% of the system, schools 5%, commercial restaurant and other industrial use 9%, and you can see Saputo Cheese uses 25% of the system. So even though your residential customers, the vast number of your customers, they only use just under 2/3 of that system capacity. Okay, so the purpose of the study is primarily to ensure that there is revenue sufficiency through the 5-year time period. The study actually goes through a 10-year time period, but what we're looking at in terms of adopting rates is for the next 5 years. So the study is to determine the funding needed over the next 5 years to operate and maintain the utility system responsibly, to create adequate revenue to fund a capital improvement plan, and to meet bond covenants. There's actually currently no debt with the wastewater service. It's all been paid off this fiscal year. But moving forward, if there was debt issued, you'd have to ensure that the rates are sufficient to cover those covenants. And then also to look at how that revenue is collected. So this study not only looks at how much money you need to collect, but who should be paying and how you should collect that money. And that's done through a cost of service analysis. That's detailed in the study. And then following that, the calculation is made of the appropriate rate schedule for the next 5 years for each of the customer classifications. So in the revenue requirement, this includes operations and maintenance costs, any debt service, system rehabilitation costs, capital improvement costs, and the difference there between those two is system rehabilitation is what you have already and you are repairing it or making it better. Capital improvements are really what are new improvements for additional infrastructure. And then ensuring that the fund has sufficient reserves as well. Rate studies are always aiming to find the right balance between multiple objectives. First of all, absolutely it has to have provide revenue sufficiency. But other goals we're looking at is to signal the value of the service to customers, to ensure that systems operations are being supported adequately, to further city policies and goals, and that the rate structure be administratively feasible, simple and logical, so that customers understand what they're paying for. Why perform a rate study now? Well, first of all, we want to adequately fund the wastewater enterprise such that other city services are not negatively impacted. In other words, we want to make sure we're not taking away funding from other services like parks and streets, public safety, and so forth. We want to ensure that there's no heavy fines for non-compliance with state and federal regulations. Say, don't kick the can down the road. Provide for timely system rehabilitation. Because circumventing cost-cutting measures in the short term creates greater costs in the long run. If maintenance projects are not addressed, they can quickly become replacement projects. So best practices for setting utility rates is to review rates every 3 to 5 years, plan for future improvements. The Wastewater Fund is an enterprise fund, meaning it is a business type activity. It is intended to be supported by the revenues that it generates and not be supported by any other city funds. To strive for equitable cost recovery and ensure the ability to meet regulatory requirements. The City of Newman last increased wastewater rates in 2011, and it last conducted a rate study in 2007, so almost 10 years ago. Here's the financial picture for the Wastewater Fund. This is net revenues, so the amount of money that's left over after operating expenses have been accounted for. And so the last rate increase was in 2011. You can see through 2015 that the rates were sufficient at that level. Since 2015, there's been some larger capital improvements, and you can see that the city's been using reserves. So it's been a downward trend, and that triggered the need to look at a rate study looking forward for the next 5 to 10 years. If wastewater rates were not increased over the next 5 years, there would be a deficiency of approximately $3.8 million, assuming that everything was funded as we have assumed in the model. But as I said before, it's an enterprise fund, so we have to ensure this money comes from the utilities. This projects the Wastewater Fund cash balance over the next 5 years. The black line is the operating reserve target, and that's our 1 year of operating expenses. The red line shows a projection for the cash balance if there is no rate increase. And the green line shows the projected cash balance with the rate increase as detailed in the rate study. And what you can see is that even though rates for most customers go up in the first year and then continue to go up, you can still see that the green line goes down through 2020. And that is because the city has some large CIP project costs. But then towards the end of the 5-year period, the balance comes back up to around the target level. So there are some major assumptions in this rate study. The first one is that the lift station, which is Fund 62, is combined with wastewater operations and capital. That's Funds 60 and 61. Second, that the operation costs increase annually, 6% a year for most of the costs. You can see there's utilities, supplies, and routine repairs, 5%, and the administrative surcharge at 3%. This is those percentages were determined by looking at historical average annual increases and discussing with the finance director what was appropriate in looking forward for the next 5 to 10 years. The new rates would coincide with the fiscal year, with the exception of the first change in rates, which would occur in February of 2018. So the first change would be February 2018, the second would be in July 2018, and then it would happen every July 1 following that. Some of the larger improvements are to the aeration basins, the groundwater well, and Prince Street to Merced Street upsizing, and it's assumed that the city pursues very low-cost interest financing with State Water Resources Control Board, and therefore those costs are debt financed. The model assumes that there are 40 new equivalent dwelling units per year. An equivalent dwelling unit is a single-family home. So it doesn't necessarily have to be 40 single-family homes, but 40 EDUs that generates about the same amount of wastewater as 40 single-family homes. The model also assumes that system rehabilitation is fully funded, and that that money is used to pay for the planned capital improvements. So if we're looking at how much more money is needed each year through the 5-year time period, currently the city collects about $2.5 million. Over the next 5 years, the need is that would be increased to about $3.5 million. To give you an idea of what types of capital improvement projects are proposed in this 5-year time frame, I've listed here the costs associated with the collection system, and that totals about $745,000, and that is in current day dollars. So in the model, we do inflate the cost estimates throughout the time period, but to talk about total cost today, it's easier to think of it in today's dollars. So about $745,000 for the collection system, and about $6.7 million for the treatment plant. So you can see the vast majority of the cost is really associated with the treatment plant. And that does include the Roca Ranch purchase in that total cost. There are some changes to the rate structure that are proposed. First, there are customer classification changes. I'm going to go over those in a moment. The new rate structure would eliminate non-residential use allowances. Currently, non-residential customers have different allowances, and then above that amount they get charged per cubic foot. And it's a different allowance for different types of non-residential customers. So it's proposed that goes away, but that in place of that, these different customer groupings would be charged the flow rate based on their metered water use multiplied by what's called a return flow factor. The reason for doing this is that many commercial uses also irrigate or use water for outdoor purposes during the summer period. When we analyzed the water use data and we looked at the water used in the wintertime compared with the summertime, on average, commercial customers are using about 85% of that water ends up going down into the wastewater system, 90% for the restaurant grocery use, and 100% for the industrial. Okay. I'll quickly go through this. The changes to customer classification. Some classifications were removed simply because there are no customers in these categories anymore. When the last rate study was done, there were customers in these categories. Religious places have been listed now under the residential rather than non-residential because the way that they're using water in the wastewater system is very similar to residential. The school category is being reduced from 3 to 1 category. Before, or in your current rate schedule, you have the 3 schools listed. They all pay exactly the same amount per student. So this just really simplifies the rate structure to say for all schools, they're charged on a per student basis the same. And then added a couple of classifications. The grocery market was separated out into its own classification, and the reason for that is the grocery market has very different water usage compared with the other businesses that were in that category. It's a really different animal from what the other businesses are. And then added a category called 2 commercial and 3 multifamily because that is a new customer type that was not in the last rate study. Here's a listing of the customers and the customer characteristics, which I'm not going to go through fully, just so that you understand that the cost of service study, which allocates the cost to each of the different customer groups, is really driven off of this table. The flow column, that is based on actual metered water use data that the city provided to me. The biological oxygen demand and the suspended solids columns, that's based on industry standards, with the exception of Saputo cheese, because the city actually measures BOD and SS for Saputo, so we have really good data for them. We know what that is. Okay, so let's look at the results. When we do this cost allocation exercise, residential customers should be allocated 52% of the cost. So if you remember those first couple of slides, they're 96% of your residential customer base, they're 61% of usage of the system, but based on what they're putting into the system, they're 52% of the cost. And you can see very clearly on here that Saputo cheese should be responsible for a large share of the system cost. This shows the change in rates. I think what I really want to point out to you is, first of all, the residential rates would not change in this first change in February. The commercial rates generally do go up. For some of them, the flow charge goes down. And then Saputo cheese is, you can see they have a fairly large increase. So depending on your customer type, it's not an across-the-board percentage increase, okay? Because we went through this whole cost of service analysis, we determined that some customers should actually be paying more than they're paying right now for their fair share, and some customers should be paying less. And that's why the residential doesn't go up at first. Over time, you have a change in your customer base. This has not been looked at in almost 10 years, and you have had a change in your customer base in that time period. So that's reflected in this cost of service study. Okay, so now I'm going to have a few charts that illustrate the impacts. This is the estimated monthly bill for residential customers. Again, you can see in that first 2018, there's no change, and then you can see a gradual increase. It's about 6% per year. This graph is to illustrate that really the vast majority of costs are for just operating the system. This is day in, day out costs that the city incurs to be able to operate the system. Here is a wastewater bill comparison for a single-family home. These are as of July 1, 2017. The median monthly bill across all of these jurisdictions is $38.79 per month, and Newman's is $37.31 a month. So you're just a little below the median. This graph is really to illustrate how some customers will see an increase in their bill, and some customers will see a decrease. Again, it's not an across-the-board percentage increase. So in this example, here's a restaurant going from $164 on average per month to $154 on average per month. You can see the industrial customers like Demare clearly having an increase. And then I always like to look at the school district. They are typically a large water user, and they are in Newman. So you can see the impact to their bill, and this first increase is about $3,000 to $4,000. This graph shows what DeMare would pay in different jurisdictions. So the blue is how much they pay for a typical monthly bill. The orange is what the change would be for them. And then if they were using the same amount of water in these comparison places, how much they would pay. So it does go up in the range with this increase. We did the same thing for Saputo cheese. Again, you can see the increase. And here's the regional comparison bill. So again, moving up in the range. And not as high as Lathrop or Patterson. These were presented to Saputo cheese. There was an ad hoc committee meeting. I didn't know, Lou, if you were going to address that. Okay, so that we did have an ad hoc committee meeting. Managers from Saputo cheese did come to Newman. We gave them this same presentation. They were very pleased and receptive to have been given the opportunity to provide their comments to it. They really didn't have any negative comments regarding the impact to their business. And I'm here to answer questions.
Any questions?
Certainly appears that this is a much more equitable distribution across all of the service users, rather than the residential having to bear the brunt of the study, so that's good. Thank you. It's a good study.
Thank you. We just need a motion and action on the resolution to accept the rate study.
Yeah, well, we'll get a motion on this one first. Okay, I'll bring it back to the council for direction on adopting resolution number 2017, next number, accepting the 2017 wastewater rate study.
I'll make a motion, we adopt resolution number 2017, next number, accepting the 2017 wastewater rate study.
Second.
Okay, motion is made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, 4 yes and 1 absent. Item 2 would be adopt resolution number 2017, next number, authorizing the city manager to initiate proposed proposition 218 proceedings.
Okay, now that the rate study's been accepted, the next step is to authorize the city manager to initiate the Proposition 218 proceedings. Proposition 218 requires that we provide written notice by mail of the proposed fee or charge to the record owner of each parcel upon which the fee or charge is proposed for imposition. It also requires us to hold a public hearing not less than 45 days after the notices are mailed. A list of the record property owners was obtained from Stanislaus County, and notices have been prepared according to California Constitution, Article 13D, Section 6A. Should this resolution be approved, notices will be mailed tomorrow, and the public hearing will be held on December 12th at the regularly scheduled council meeting, 48 days from tomorrow. The resolution before you authorizes the city manager to proceed.
Okay. Bring it back to council for direction.
Move that we adopt resolution number 2017, next to number, authorizing the city manager to initiate Proposition 218 proceedings.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion been made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, 4 yes and 1 absent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very comprehensive evaluation. It is that there's so much information there, it just seems like there's not enough time to pull it all together, but you have a lot of information. I mean, there was some things that I saw in that I couldn't believe. I saw Escalon at one point was up here, and I figured that it has to do with the fact there's wineries in that area that's causing the wastewater to reach that, go to that higher level. I don't know. Anyway, thank you for the report. And with that, we're going to move on to, we're going to bypass 11 because Stanislaus County Supervisor Jim DeMartini is not here tonight, and we're going to go to item 12, items from the city manager and staff. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Two quick items for you. First of all, the mayor and I had a sit-down with Senator Cannella not too long ago to discuss the issues we believe we're having with SB1 and its implementation. We've talked about that where the state won't let us borrow revenues and do a bigger project. They want you to do annual projects, and for the first year, $60,000, and $160,000, $180,000 after that. It's just too small to actually do a project, so you'd have to bank money. He was receptive to our comments and actually called the chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee and discussed the issue with them and got a positive response from him. And it sounds like they were going to try to work together to get legislation passed that would allow the city to internally borrow some money so that we could do a bigger project up front and then pay ourselves back with future SB1 revenues, which is what we wanted. So it was a very productive meeting. He seemed receptive, and I guess the chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee was receptive towards it as well. So maybe in the next legislative year, something they would pursue and hopefully pass at the beginning of next calendar year. So we'll see how that goes. The only other item I had was, excuse me, last Thursday we had a planning commission meeting, and that was our Northwest Quadrant project. As you know, the Northwest Quadrant is a project funded by the city council. The city is developing a master plan in accordance with our general plan. It includes an EIR that goes along with it. Unfortunately, 2 members of the planning commission were unable to attend. Commissioner Coleman and Commissioner Dudley did not show up, so that we only had 3. And at the end of the meeting, we only had a 2-to-1 vote. We had one commissioner actually vote against the project that the city's funding and putting forth and consistent with our general plan. So that was caught a lot of us by surprise. We're working with our legal counsel about pursuing and how this is going to be moving forward. The planning commission is only an advisory committee to you, so therefore, ultimately this will get to you. We're just trying to figure out the timetable now, whether that'll be November or your December meeting. So, but we'll keep you in the loop in terms of how that's moving forward. But that'll get to you soon, and then we'll hopefully get that approved either at the end of this year or early in 2018. We'll submit that to LAFCO shortly after that, but we're still pretty much on schedule to get Northwest Quadrant to LAFCO for approval probably around April would be the time frame that we're looking at. It could be March, it could be May, it just depends on their schedule and how things go over the next 2 months here. But that's all I had to report, and I can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, City.
I have nothing to share with you tonight.
You don't have anything to share?
If you have any questions for me, I'll answer them for you.
Stephanie's going to enlighten us with something.
Just to put the word out there, so our community service officer has already done her patrol of every neighborhood and citywide. She's already returning to certain areas. And just to kind of put it out there, that citations will now be written towards any violations of the code. Our goal is obviously to educate and work with people, but anybody who's already been warned of a potential violation, if it's happening again, they will be cited now. So just wanted to let the council be aware in case you get any phone calls asking why they received a citation. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'll say that I think that was a plus that you brought that person on, because it's working.
She's doing a great job.
It's really working. I see the effects, and people are talking about it, and there's some support in terms of what she's doing out there.
Yeah, she's got a great demeanor with our community, and she really enjoys, talking with everybody and explaining how things work. So it's wonderful. It's been really great.
Yeah. So keep up the good work. You need her.
Yep.
Thank you, Stephanie. Lou?
Nothing to report tonight.
Chief, do you have anything to add?
No, just completed another CPR class. Councilmember did attend. It was good, huh?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it's good. So we'll be having another one in November, the 18th. Also, too, I've been just keeping an eye on our local ambulance provider. They're looking at management firms, so I think I've kept you guys abreast of that. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I can answer any questions you may have.
Well, I'll say this, that it was a good session, class, and I encourage the other council members who've never taken that CPR, please take it. Because if I drop dead, you know, you know what to do for me.
We'll send Keith over there.
Well, if I'm not here, that's it. I told him, I said, if I'm not here, he's up, so, yeah.
Thanks for keeping us posted, Keith. We appreciate
problem.
that.
Yeah, seems to be a big interest in that.
The CPR? Yeah, oh, yeah.
That's amazing. But it's not the same as it used to be.
No, we use our hands now, not our feet.
Well, I believe in the Kickstarter.
Yes, yeah, I knew it. I knew that was coming.
Thank you very much. All right, you got anything for us tonight?
Not a thing. Nothing.
Thank you so much. Nick, do you have anything for us tonight?
Thank you.
Not tonight, thank you.
I don't have anything, but I'd just like to thank everyone that's here tonight. We wish that the room was filled all the time, but the only time that happens is when we have something that they're upset about. Maybe that's not a good thing, but there has been occasions when a lot of people come forward. Anyway, thank you very much for coming. And with that, I'll ask for adjournment.
So moved.
Second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone.